Welcome, everybody. Welcome in to our August Technical Training 2024. This is our review preview training. So we're going to kick it off with a few things. First, we'll do some announcements and what trainings are upcoming. Makara will take care of those, and then he'll also be running the Kahoot with you guys. And then we'll get into our main topics for technical monitoring review preview. So this is our agenda. So Makara, take it away.
Hello, folks. So we have some upcoming training opportunities, and we still have some slots. So we're doing our course 3, the brand new EA QCI certification, and that's going to be happening at the last week of August. We still have one more spot. So if there's any of you who are ready to take that certification class, just be able to get me that letter from BPI saying you can challenge the test, and we can plan for that. We also have some recertifications on the first week of September. I've already reached out to some of you to schedule those. So if you need to recertify soon and for whatever reason I didn't catch you, it's because you didn't update your WAP report. So if I'm missing you, just let me know and we can set up a day for that, because we still have one more time slot that we can schedule you for. And we also have a tentative upcoming EA 101 class. So you have new hires or you're done with the LMS class online. We're going to be sending out a survey to see who wants to sign up for that class. So just expect that soon. And we're going to ask you to register by at least September 16th. But if you are planning on new hires and you think they'll be ready by October, just let me know and we can still accommodate. Along with that, we also have our spring conference training here at the IWTC. Our tentative date is May 13th and 14th. So just plan for that in the upcoming year. And obviously, we also have some conferences and stuff coming up. We have Energy Out West in about 2 weeks, between August 19th and 23rd, NCAP, August 28th and 30th, and NASCAP, September 25th and to 29th. So, yeah. If you're saying something, Kyia, you're muted.
Okay, I said sorry. I'm going to bring up the Kahoot. So we'll be playing Kahoot, and Makara will just read off the slides. So this is the game pin at the top. Go to Kahoot it, and you should just enter the game pin. It should look like this when you open it. If you haven't played before, I'll turn on the volume. Can you guys hear the sound? Thumbs up if I can hear your sound. Can you hear the sound? I don't know if you can.
All I can hear is you talking.
Oh, okay. Well, then it won't share my audio. Well, you just turn your audio on for your own game, I guess, because it should have audio. We'll probably wait a few minutes for everybody to join. I think there's, how many people on our call? 21?
I won't be able to join, FYI.
Oh yeah, you won't. That's fine. Okay. If anybody's in that wants to join, great. Anybody else need more time? Shout out. Okay. We'll move on then. So we got about 13 players. We'll press start.
Alrighty, first question. If you can't verify the age of a dwelling for SHPO, what should you do? Got 4 options. Some of these questions should look familiar to you. These were from old technical meetings. And the correct answer is red. Treat the dwelling as though it is 50 years or older.
Nice.
I don't know if this minivan guy is fair. Looks very familiar. What must be included in every RMP rebate comments? If you fill out a lot of BWRs, this should be very familiar. And the correct answer is what type of cooling system is in the dwelling? Red. So if you got that, you're a smart cookie or a really awesome minivan. What information must be included in the audit photo description of these 4 photos? Take a close look at the photos. What do we see? And the correct answer is blue. Orientation and cardinal direction. Always take all 4 sides of your houses, folks.
And then label them. Make
Yeah.
sure to label what direction they are orientating.
Yes.
Somebody needs to knock this minivan down.
I know. This minivan's killer, though. Based on the photo provided, which is going to pop up soon, which building height should be entered into the ASHRAE ventilation calculation? This one's a tricky one. And the correct answer is C.
Nice. Wow. What was blue?
Yeah.
I'll have to look back on, I'll show the, oh, yeah.
Yeah, I fell for the same thing when I first looked at that photo.
So reminder, this will be a good reminder. We always want to look. So this is above, this is showing above grade. I know it didn't give you a lot of time to like really look at this, but there's a living space right here. So there's actually some area that has living space. You actually want to take the lowest above grade to the highest point of the pressure boundary. So pressure boundary here. So just remember that. All right. Who's the minivan? I don't know. If it's Justin, you're not allowed to play Justin anymore, okay? Give everybody else a chance. You already know these.
Stop letting them see the answers before the game.
These are all the exterior features that should be photographed during the audit, except which one will you need to photograph?
I don't see anything wrong with any of these.
You want to look at the questions, not necessarily the photo.
That's what I was referring to.
Right.
Oh, got it.
Answer is green, red Trans Am in the back shed.
Yeah, you do definitely want a photo of the underside of a cantilever.
Definitely.
All right, nice job, Shad.
What weatherization information cannot be found in this photo? A lot of options.
Not to be found.
What do you not see from this photo?
A.
Say,
Is Zach right, folks? Yes, he is.
I guess he's assuming A is the triangle.
Yeah, we'll just assume that's A.
Got it.
A.
So looks like a few people got this one wrong. So look at this. So where the thermal boundary is established, where's the thermal boundary established in this crawl space?
The floor.
It's at the floor.
It's at the floor because that's where the insulation is. So that's why that is, this actually is showing where it's established. Now you're not getting a full view. You can make an argument for that, but you are at least seeing, oh, it's at the floor currently. So nice. Who's Mongoose?
Yeah, Mr. Mongoose.
All right, last question, I think.
All right, true or false? A weatherization and crisis BWR can be combined if both activities occurred on the same job. Is it true or false?
I don't even remember this.
Yeah.
All right, wow, good job. Good job, folks.
Wow, great job, everyone. Yep, that's right. It's false. Separate them, please.
Yep. Yeah, the only instance where you can actually have them combined is if you had a cooling or heating crisis and one of them triggered the other. All right, let's see who's up here. Nice, Minivan's third. Your hero. Nice, good job, Chad.
Wow,
You
good
paid attention
job.
to all of our
You
meetings.
did it.
All right, we'll move on. Let me share my screen, my other screen now. All right. Okay, so move forward. If it will let me click to the next slide. Okay, so again, agenda. So now it'll be Nicole's turn. All right, Nicole, tell me when to move my slide.
All right, go ahead. Get show on the road. All right, so I'm here to give you the snapshot on the programmatic side. It does affect all of you. So let's go over it a little bit. Overall, we look good. This was across all agencies. That average was at 87%. Go ahead and click, Kyia. That gray line there is last year's programmatic monitoring. So we did have a slight increase there. As we know, these numbers may fluctuate. They don't always tell the entire story. There's lots of things that go into each one. But it gives a snapshot that, you know, there has been some improvement over the year in all of these areas and checks that I make. Go ahead. Most of the areas have increased. There was only a couple of decreases. So overall, again, we're looking good. And last one. But is there room for improvement? Always, always, always. There's always room for improvement, right, guys? So I'm just going to go over the areas real quick if you guys are not aware of what I'm looking at when I'm out there for programmatic. Yeah, most of it is with the coordinator. The responsibilities, the processes, that falls mostly on the coordinator, but almost all of the areas, they have assistance by you guys, by their staff. They're not doing this alone. So the files, obviously, you guys all have your hands in them. You know, everyone's doing their part, making sure that those required items are in the file that show that they're eligible, first of all, and that in each one of the categories that all of that proper information is in there. I'm also looking at denials and deferrals when I'm looking at my checks, and you know who you are if you're a part of that process. Usually it's the auditor. And you guys are doing a good job. The procurement area, that also involves you. So yeah, some of procurement is like subcontractor contracts, but it's also the materials. And I'm looking at, are we following our guidelines? Are we following the federal policy on it? And so you guys have a hand in it. Inventory, same thing. It's how we're tracking it. Are we following the policy, the processes? Do we have policy and processes? Are we doing reconciliation? Are we doing those things that we've been asked to do, right? I've been saying over the last year, when DOE comes out, we want to look good. And we did. DOE did come out and we did look good. And we want to just continue to look good and make sure that all of these things are increasing. The reporting area, a lot of that has to do with the WAP report items. So the badges, the licenses, are you using the issue tracker, the equipment calibration. And there's many of you that may have been assigned one or multiple areas to make sure that those are being followed up on. The RFFs are requests for payments or requests for funds. That is mostly coordinator stuff where they're tracking, you know, what everyone's spending and what line we're spending it on. Also has to do with vehicles though. And, or no, that particular one doesn't have to do with vehicles. Sorry, that's the next one. So program operations, that has a lot to do with vehicles, tracking those, looking at maintenance, all of those things that you guys help with. A quick mention here, I'm going to just kind of zoom through mine. But I will be doing a new checklist. We're going to talk more about it at coordinators meeting for my coordinators out there. But some of these are going to be changing just a little bit and combining some areas, broadening others, specifically files, weatherization files, crisis files. That's just going to be client files. I'm going to have a policy and procedure specific line. So right now they're all just kind of within each of those categories. It's going to be its own thing. And then also on inventory, I'm going to be spreading that out into like actual inventory and then your property management side. So that's the items that currently over the 5,000 that's increased. We'll talk more about it. But those are some of the things that'll be changing. So go ahead, next slide. As I did my training needs analysis, so that's exactly what this is all about. We go through and we look at our programmatic monitoring and decide what areas are there out there across the agency that we could focus on as a state to help you guys and improve that constant improvement, right? And these are the top 5 that I identified across the board, across all the agencies that were most erred on and that I'll be addressing. So, you know, we have policy writing, continuity of service, specifically that little graphic there, the policy and procedure manual, and then how we actually do things when we're really busy and short-staffed manual. Really, it's one and the same, guys. Like policy is a living document. It's going to change. It should be changing. Your procedure should be updated as things change within your agency, right? And who knows best other than the staff that's actually doing it. So that's where you guys come in. That if you are actually doing the procedure, you know, maybe you would be asked to help with writing that procedure and that process. So that next person that comes along, that's what continuity is. Next person that comes along, you get hit by a bus, they're able to pick that up and know exactly how that process is done, right? We have a couple areas in procurement. We're going to cover contracts with subcontractors and then material purchases as well. And then for inventory tracking, disposal processes, policy, those types of things, and reconciliation. I mentioned in the spring training this year, this is about the client files, and we will be watching for it next year. It did come out in the program notice that it is a change in guidelines. Those client files, it's required that they are complete before submitting that BWR. So the expectation is that they're complete and they're organized in standard file format, and I will be out there checking on that. So go ahead. So when do I plan on doing these things? So that's what this is about. Right now, the current plan, policy writing, I'll probably be presenting that in a coordinators meeting, as well as the contract specific procurement area. So, but like I said, the policy really, that writing could affect any of you, and specifically on those procedures. So just be aware of that and have that in your heads as a heads up. The procurement materials purchases, typically that is you guys. That's QCI, that's auditors, that's field crew that have been asked to take care of those material purchases. So we're going to be covering that in an upcoming technical meeting. And then the last two, the inventory, as of right now, plan on doing something in regards to that during spring training. That is the same. Like I said, the QCI, auditors, crew leads, like it's different at every agency who's being asked to do it, but it's just having more and a better understanding of it. So those are the things, and that's my quick overview of programmatic.
Thanks, Nikole. And if anybody ever has more questions about like programmatic stuff, reach out to Nikole, or you can talk to your program coordinator. We will be doing the coordinators meeting tomorrow, so they'll be getting more details, and they're the leader that will then be disseminating that information. So she just wanted to do a brief overview to catch everybody up on a basic level of speed of where you guys are at and helping with your other tasks that you assist your coordinators with. So I'm going to be talking about monitoring for our technical team. So I'll review Roger's items as well, but I just want to note it now that if you have any further questions about Roger's section, he primarily does QCI and production. I might not have all the answers, so I can definitely write them down, or if you have any other after this, shoot him an email and he'll get back to you when he comes back from his vacation. But I just wanted to note that here in case I get too in the weeds and forget that I needed to say that. So next slide. So just first off, who's awesome? You're awesome. You guys are actually doing a really good job. Despite all the turnover and the challenges that we've had this year, you guys are doing really well. And we did do a big monitoring sample this year. So overall, the agency accuracy stands at 88% for PY23. And this is a really good score. If we were in grade school, it'd be a B+, which is above average and doing well. It's like getting really close to that A mark. And the previous 2-year average was at 90%. So there is a slight decline by 2%. Since we've maintained that 90% accuracy rate before, but we also need to consider some of the contexts of this year's monitoring. This year we had a large sample size of 57 units, while in PY23, so this is an example of the 57 units we had to monitor this year. PY22, we actually monitored only 32 units. So we went from doing a 5% to a 10%. We also had to add on some of that WAP bill because we've had to complete more units. And we had a few other changes at the state level of minimum requirements for monitoring. So that did go up. With the larger sample size, though, it inherently brings up more variability, and it's important to recognize that. There was also, again, things like turnover that likely leaked a little bit into some of these things, but the fact that we only dropped by 2% is still like a really amazing feat. We're still performing at a high level. So we're really happy with this score. That doesn't mean we're not going to want to improve that score and kind of gain back that 2%, but it means that we're still maintaining a high standard across the program. And it's a strong outcome and demonstrates that our program processes and our teams, aka all of you, are working hard to maintain that performance, and the consistency is something to be proud of. And it'll give us a solid foundation for us to build on, because if we saw really major decreases in some things, that would be pretty concerning, and it would take us a lot more time to kind of fix those items moving forward. So now it's more maintenance period. We do know, since there is some turnover, we're going to be educating very much newer folks, and we are aware of that, but we look to those that are already existing in the program having these good scores to help train those people, because they're seeing them every day. Whereas at the state level, we're not seeing you every single day, and we only have so many trainings, but we really look to the agency to at least disseminate that knowledge and gain that consistency. So here's a little bit more deeper dive look into that. So our expectations, I'll kind of review those based on the previous year, but this is just a general map of all the categories of what we sent your coordinators this year. And you can kind of see a little bit of some lines in here of like decrease but increase. I'll specifically zoom in on this blue line though. So the previous 2 years are the other lines. And there are a few areas that are decreasing, but there's also some that have increased. So that's really good to see. These are a few of those more specific areas of increase and decrease. Photos, audit photos, we got a lot bigger increase this year. And that should also be increased next year, just for the fact that we're adjusting some things in the audit tool that I'll talk to you about. But not the audit tool, excuse me, our monitoring checklist and tool. But yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to speak up. But I just want to highlight these 4 or 5 areas. This is areas that we did technical trainings on the previous year. So some of them we did have some increases, but we will be looking for improvement since we did train on them, and it was in the middle of monitoring season. So of course we already pulled some of your client files at that point that we wouldn't expect that increase right away. But once we've done some of our training, we will expect it this year. So if you weren't able to watch any of those technical trainings, definitely do, because we are going to be looking at them this coming monitoring to make sure that there's improvement in this area. But already we're seeing a little bit improvement, and we're looking forward to see more. So this year we are doing things a little bit differently in how we're doing our training plan, specifically our technical training plan. We want to customize it a little bit more to the different roles we all play. So that's why we brought Nikole in to kind of talk about, oh, you do play roles in the programmatic piece that aren't necessarily things that we kind of bring you into the loop on sometimes. So we wanted to make sure to include that so that there's standard, everybody's on the same page. And then also the 3 specific areas that our technical meetings usually focus on. And I don't know about you, but I was excited to do training. I'm excited to do this training, especially the coming trainings we're going to be doing. But we had a really fun time doing the training conference. I hope all of you had a good time, because we tried out several new topics and like how to provide certain trainings to make some of this content that we're constantly repeating all the time a little bit funner to participate in. So we're going to be implementing a little bit more of that this year, hopefully. And then also we're going to be doing like auditor, field crew, and quality control inspection training specific to you. So we're going to be training some legends. We're doing some legend training. I thought these memes were pretty funny, so I put them in here. I couldn't pick one. My favorite is, I think this one. I mean, this one's cool. This one I think is more like what we're doing, but this one's just kind of funny too. Because there's training and then there's this kinds of training, right? Let us know if we're doing this kind of training to you. Okay, please give us feedback.
I'm actually going to break in real quick. Something that I forgot to mention, but is agency specific training. So those were my top 5, but I'm also going to have some agency specific training when I come out for my programmatic monitoring, that I identify the need. And I'm going to get with the coordinators. I'm going to let you guys know what I'm going to be covering when I come out and who needs to be there. So that may be
Yes,
maybe all of you.
Yeah. I think we also are going to try to like let you guys know what our topics are ahead of time. That's been the standard, but we'll make an extra effort to let you know, and because we want every one of these trainings to be worth your time. So yeah, we'll make sure to let the right parties know. So I can't justify it. So the energy audit, that this section is going to be talking about some of the areas that we had concerns in, and or just areas that we think we could improve in. One of those areas is the itemized cost justifying measures. So I think my animations aren't working, but I'll just go through them. So shell, A1 shell. So there's several sections in A1 that we look at. That is attics and foundations, walls, doors, windows, and anytime that we find errors in them, they kind of get their own score because that's how we have it separated in our monitoring tool. But overall, this year we had a little bit more of a struggle on attics and foundations, but in general, shell did have a little bit of a decline. But this scores specifically with attics and foundations. So examples of kind of what went wrong. Well, first we had all 7 agencies are having a little bit a few issues here and there with the shell inputs, in particular the attics and foundations. A 44% error rate is pretty high in some of these instances, and there was one finding and one area of concern. So if you're familiar of what your monitoring looked like, take note. If you feel like you're in that category, well, everybody is in the category of shell needing improvement. So we are going to be training on that with energy auditors specifically. And then there were a lot of cantilevers in particular that were missed. So if you have any questions about any of these results, again, like shout out to me. I can give you more details, but in particular, cantilevers were missed and misidentifying foundation types. Like sometimes there was people that were, there were walls that were like half wood and then they were actually a foundation, or they counted a room that they were trying to isolate the CAS. They didn't actually properly understand that they needed to not include that as a foundation wall. They needed to have one foundation wall, which was actually the foundation, and then they needed to include the other ones as walls. So there was kind of like a little bit of complication with more of these higher like areas that had more unique components in them. So there was also a lot of unique homes in this sample. There was so many unique homes in this sample that it took a lot of work to kind of piece out some of these details. And so that's kind of what I'm going to be focusing the training on, is working on unique situations so that how do you evaluate them and you can get more in front of them, because not every home's the same, and it can be difficult if you don't see them all the time, in how and where those thermal and pressure boundaries are, and how you can identify shell items and what shell measurements are actually important versus which ones might be a little bit more repetitive. So that was some of the issues. And the next one was itemized costs and justifying measures. So 7 agencies, 42% error rate. So similar to shell, this was an area that in particular, that was the problem, was justifying some of the itemized costs. There was one finding in 2 areas of concern. There was a lot of opportunities for improvement, but we only listed the 2 ones that were really concerning. But in general, everybody, there needs to be more comments. So even in some of your shells, like when you're inputting things in audits, more comments are better, because they can help me, not only as the auditor, check the work that you're doing, but also the QCI, and also gives context to your field crew so that they can understand whether, like, if they go into this really unique home, if you're not explaining that, oh, insulation needs to go on this particular area of the home, not here, because you can waste a lot of materials or have to do a callback if you're not specific enough, if there's really unique, like if there's multiple false ceilings, for example, can be one of them. So itemized costs, and then also particularly with itemized costs, not clearly justifying those. So again, comments. Section B8 of the program guidelines is very useful in the sense that it'll tell you whether or not it is allowable and what funding source, but also you'll know based on funding sources if it's IRM, HSM, or NAM. So we will be doing a training on that in particular because there were some confusing and unique situations that resulted in either one, potentially disallowed costs, or two, needing to correct how you are justifying that particular cost. And then the next one is infiltration reduction. So we've actually improved on infiltration reduction. I just wanted to hit this one in particular because we have had some requests for infiltration reduction strategies, in particular for mobile homes. So that is why this one's kind of more on the energy audit side of things. But in general, we did find there were some issues with people not using the priority list correctly and not developing a clear work order or properly directing that work for the field crew to follow. And like blower door guided air sealing should be on the bottom of the list, maybe not even on the list, because it should be the most highest priority items. And if you're having a hard time identifying that when you're at the audit, imagine how difficult it might be with the field crew that don't have the same training as you. So it's really important to take a little extra time and write the work order right. So those are the primary areas for energy audit that we're going to be focusing on. Any questions currently about this? Obviously, we're going to be doing training on it later, but any questions right now about this? Cool.
I have a question.
Oh, yes, question, Tina, yes.
On your infiltration reduction, where you're showing a 37% error rate, can you elaborate on that?
Yes, so some of the items, if the priority list is not properly developed, meaning that it's not followed or you're not using zonals, that you will get that section of the monitoring incorrect. So those were the two primary areas that we found issues on. The error rate, this is across all 7 agencies, so that's the average, or that's if we were to combine every single agency's issues into one average, it's 37% that were not, it's basically we're only getting it accurate 63% of the time or whatever. So that is basically based on our A01 infiltration reduction specific line item in the monitoring tool, which is, are you following your priority list, which is in the guidelines, and you need to follow it like as the top priority items. So first duct, if you're not evaluating your ducts correctly, if they're outside of the thermal boundary, that can affect this. And that should be the top item of how you're doing your air sealing strategy. So another area was not providing comments in situations that are unique or confusing. So there could be an example like the top plates, there's a false ceiling and there's a difficult way to access that. But if the auditor doesn't call out like, hey, you need to go to the top ceiling in attic A, so using your site sketch to inform the work order, and just making it more clear for the auditor, for the field crew. And then also using all of the money that you receive in your infiltration reduction. We know that sometimes the infiltration reduction, you don't get very much money, or you're really at a low ACH. In those instances, like we do take that into account when we're monitoring. So the error rate isn't necessarily what our infiltration reduction looks like for the whole program. This is if you actually did that particular, if you actually wrote your strategy or not, and what you did in your strategy, and if it was effective. That's what that means. Does that help, Tina?
Yeah, a little bit. Thanks.
Yep. All right, next. Field crew and production. So again, reach out to Rogers if you have more detailed questions, if I'm not able to answer them. but this is what it looks like for now for field crew and production. So the first item that we saw is, and we also heard from the network that they want more training in, is worst case draft testing. So there were 6 agencies, that's 20 homes out of 57 monitored. So a 56.5% or 65% accuracy rate. So it's a little bit opposite from the other one. It is that 20 homes out of 57 had not having in progress worst case draft forms. So that was no tests were conducted when required, or the forms were not filled out correctly and completely. So that is an area that's pretty high risk for our clients. And so we want to make sure that we are doing that properly, not only properly, but frequently when we're in a home that has combustion gases that can backdraft, or combustion appliances that can backdraft. So that was the primary areas that we saw. And so we want to make sure that we're going to be running some worst case drafts with everybody. We might do a live run through with you, which would be fine, or we'll might train at the agency doing some in progress training where we run a worst case draft with the field crew, just so we can get some hands-on training. So that's what we're going to be doing for field crew in number 1. And then number 2 is work orders. So 6 agencies, 16 homes, 72%. This is them not following the work order. So the auditor puts the time in to have the work order, and we saw that the work order was reasonable, but then there's a few instances where field crews aren't following the work order, and that's really important because it can mess with our SIRs. If there is something that needs to diverge on the work order from what the auditor put in, the field crew should definitely be communicating with the auditor before they take action on that. Some of the items in particular not following the work order as directed. Some examples would be more or less light bulbs, which you'd think is like, oh, it's just a light bulb, but you have to go back and fix the audit because you have to have it follow that SIR. So that can be an issue. The other thing that we saw was some attic insulation that was called for, but in some instances they didn't use all of the materials that were on that material list. So they called for one insulation, but installed a different one. That can bring up a lot of issues in the payback of those items, because some, like cellulose, for example, has a different bag size and bag count. And the audit, only if the audit is saying we need fiberglass, it's not going to spit out how much you need or the correct cost for that. And they have different specifications. So just making sure that you're matching those costs and you're updating that audit if it's because you have a material issue or something. The other last item, and this one's on there because it's just a high risk item, 91% is a decent score, but when you consider it's lead and it's making sure we have proper documentation, this is something that affects the client. It affects DOE, but it also, you can get in trouble at the state of Utah level with not having proper documentation. So this is something that is high risk, and so we want to focus on it to in progress lead safe work. And the primary issue, I believe, was not enough photo documentation showing that the lead safe work was proper. Yeah, we'll do more training on that, and or ensuring that we have proper documentation. We always will be talking about lead in our trainings. We just wanted at least one more specific one in this particular area. Some notes on this. The auditor is the quarterback. The audit must be determined what is installed. So if the field crew, like the field crew is who runs the play. Now, auditors aren't perfect. We want them to do a great job in a really thorough inspection. But if things happen sometimes, or there's really weird things like, let's say that you go check this wall, the auditor checked multiple walls, but let's say there's one area in a wall that there's insulation and the auditor called for everywhere to have insulation. That's something you might want to reach out to them about and say, hey, we need to adjust the work order. We need to adjust the audit because we found this. Or there was one that I was working in when I was out in the field. that there was a false ceiling behind a cabinet, and it was like really difficult to have found that like I almost fell into it when I was in an attic working with someone, and we didn't know it was there. And so we were filling this insulation, and then like, oh, we're filling a cavity in this random house that we didn't see that this was here. Like that, some unique situations happen like that. And we really just want to emphasize like, hey, communicate that with your auditors so that they can make the decision and call the play, because they're the ones having to justify these costs. And that's just a nice little graphic. All right, so the next item, oh, I think I went backwards. Oh, that's, excuse me, this is supposed to say QCI at the top. I did not see that error until now. Anyway, so this is for QCI, so ignore that top part. I'll cross this out and put QCI. Just pretend that QCI is there, okay? Anyways, so for post-ASHRAE, so there were 7 agencies, 24 homes, so that's a 58% accuracy. So we want to bring that accuracy up, of course, because post-ASHRAE, that's really important. That's an automatic callback if we come, if there's not something that can be fixed that we can do on site. So ASHRAE is really important. It's a requirement for whether or not something is like a home is going to be able to be a weatherized unit. And that is why we're focusing on it. In particular, some of the issues that we found in particular with the QCI is the volume, number of bedrooms, occupants, building height. In some cases, they relied on the auditor's calculations, which auditors, we want you to be doing better on this. But the QCI's job is to check your work. And if the QCI is checking someone's work and double checking it, they need to also fix it. And then they also need to add that into the training tracker. So that's part of the issue why we're going to focus on ASHRAE in particular with QCI, because it's one of these high items, and we want to make sure that they are checking that accuracy, because and in some instances they maybe did double check, but then they maybe missed something and they still got it maybe incorrect, or the circumstance once it's post weatherization after production, they maybe missed that there was something that changed in the home and they needed to adjust that. So those were some of the issues, and the goal is to fix that and correct that, and we're going to start that with the QCI for them to check that work. So volume, bedrooms, occupants, building height. So yes, sir. Zach Mitchell.
Question. I was wondering if, so the number on, like, say, what number I use anyway is off of the application or off the heat. So that they have 1 occupant in the house, and once if there's really 3 or 4 in the house. But obviously you want to use the 4, or should we use what's on the heat?
It's whichever number is greater. So ASHRAE says that it's the number of bedrooms, or it's the number of occupants. Whichever one is greater, we want to be using. So if you only have 2 people in the house, but there are people living, like you would probably want to use the number of bedrooms plus 1, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I guess the ASHRAE calculator would calculate that anyway. But I was just curious about that, because sometimes the heat certificate we want to go, because normally you guys on the end, they use what was on the heat on the BWR, correct?
Well, and the thing is, yes, correct. Use what's on the BWR, or use what's on the heat certificate of what they say is in the home, because that you don't know if those people are going to be living there long term. You don't know that entire situation, and things can change. So I wouldn't fault you if usually when we're looking at these things, it's whichever one's greater in the ASHRAE calculator. Again, as you said, we're hoping that it'll solve a lot of those issues that we're having. Just because of the updated version, but we want to we do take that into consideration when we are scoring these items, that we're not going to fault you if there's if it's on the heat cert and the application and all the things that they have X number of individuals, where if that is on your ASHRAE, if there's that or more, we're fine with that. It just, we don't want to see less than what they applied with. So.
Yeah. Cool.
Thanks for the clarification. Okay, so post worst case draft test. So just that was 6 agencies, 19 homes, 67% accuracy. So the main issues that we found on that is not including CO readings and also not correctly setting up home in worst case draft conditions. So, and we also saw that if the QCI is having an issue with this, it's probably something that everyone's having an issue with, or usually a lot of the time the QCIs are training a lot of everyone else because they're kind of the top person in that they need to know both audit and production in order to do their job effectively. That if they're struggling with this, we definitely want to make sure to start with them and then move with everybody else as well. But they'll probably have a combined training, or even just how to, we might have a more in-depth training of like how to see if someone's doing it incorrectly, because you do have to know a few different things to see, oh, like that person, whoever did this, when I'm checking this file, isn't doing this particular one correct. I probably should talk to them, or I need to add that to the issues tracker. The next item is audit review. So 7 agencies, 88% accuracy. 88% accuracy is still great. You know, it's still a very good threshold of where we want to be. But there are some instances that we saw in the audit review that could have been caught if somebody just looked, like if a second person just looked, that we could have had this score increase quite a lot more, because there was a lot of just small mistakes of the field collection form not being not matching the audit, or vice versa, the audit not matching the field collection form, or even the site sketch having a different score from the audit form. So this is something that was across the board with all 7 agencies, that it would have been nice to have someone come and review that audit, and we want to focus in on the QCI being that person, at least in this instance. But they are the ones that are supposed to be putting things into the training tracker log that you have in your WAP reports. And you'll notice if you've seen your monitoring report for your agency, one of the corrective actions this year that Rogers put in there was, hey, I want you to put all of these items in your training tracker or your issues tracker, and then build a training plan off of that. And so we want to do training on how do you use that information you collect to better inform and make the process smoother, and how do you better inform and educate everybody in that line, and how do you use that information that we have there. The other item that I wanted to mention is frequency of callbacks. That's something that we're going to be looking into a little bit more this year. And in particular, we had several callbacks, quite a lot of callbacks, at least from our monitoring. So we sending you back to the agent or to the client home. And if we don't want that, like as the auditor, you can send, while you're still in production, a callback. But once it comes to us, we're like, oh, why didn't the QCI catch that item? So we are going to be slightly adjusting items that need to be tracked on the QCI form, and I'll talk about that in a second. But in general, we're just trying to help make an emphasis on the part the QCI role is playing, just because they're the last man standing before it gets to completion, right? Like they're at the completion point and they're signing off on it. We just want to make sure that they're supported in that role and able to talk to the auditor and say, hey, auditor, I need you to do better here, or talk to the production, hey, I need you to do better here, because that is your role, right? And then training needs analysis using the issues tracker. Again, I already kind of mentioned that. So our plan in providing this training to the specific roles for auditors, field crew, QCI, is to enhance what you're already doing and just make minor tweaks here and there to be like, this is how it might work better, or just keep improving, because we always want to be improving. It's a tailored approach. We hope that every team member will be better equipped to perform their tasks. And we are going to be looking for that feedback from you when we do these trainings. So stay tuned. Please come with feedback and come with issues that you're having at your agency. So if there's an 88% accuracy, but you have 0 items on your issues tracker, how do we, and you tell me that you don't need any training needs, then there might be a discrepancy there, right? Or yeah, so just take a note on those items. Again, I do want to emphasize that 88% is a super commendable result. And so again, these are just items for us to continue to improve. And given like all the circumstances, it's really a testament to the hard work and dedication that all of you are exhibiting in this. So again, just want to highlight all of the items that we do really like. That was such a much larger sample size, and it makes me feel really confident that all of you are really caring about your jobs and doing the good work that you are. Like, yes, we know that you're doing that, but we actually have data to prove that, and that's really awesome. And again, we did really great with DOE. So I'm sure we'll talk more about that in the coordinators meeting, but yeah, we want some quality assurance. So what's new? I'll wrap up in the last 2 minutes here. Monitoring tools updates. Audit photos. So again, we're going to be scoring that just slightly differently, meaning that if you're missing 1 photo of the required photos, you're not getting dinged as a whole point. It'll just be a percentage of a point out of 14. We'll also be adjusting the review section, or the QCI review section, for how they're checking the audits and production as well. And we'll be just slightly grading that differently. So we'll be adding items to the updated QCI form, which that should be published soon once Rogers comes back. I believe it's finished, but I wanted last check. So we'll be updating that and sending that out to the network, and you'll know. And then we'll be, yeah, we'll just be scoring things slightly different, the new QCI form. We'll have a few extra items of like, hey, we just want to double check because we had some vague language. We want to make sure that you're doing this item, or you're checking this. And then there's also some updates to make it a little bit more automated. So if the home is like 1979, it won't require you to it'll just automatically click NA on any of the lead items so that you don't have to do that. So trying to just improve it similar to how we improved the ASHRAE tool. Again, anybody has questions, comments, concerns, it is 8:59 on the dot. So if you have any questions, feel free to stay after a little bit and ask me them. But just want to end this on a positive note, and thank you for your continued commitment to being great and caring about our clients and doing the good work that you are doing.